Hey guys, Stephen Cox here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about changing the strings. So we're going to change to the Flatwound strings. Now this U-bass already has the Flatwound strings on it, so what I'm really going to do is take the strings off and put the same strings back on again. And I'm not going to do it to every single string since the process is really the same for each string, with one exception. We're going to talk a little bit about filing the nut. You could also replace the nut. That's that little piece up here where the strings kind of fit through before they go across the neck, this little plastic piece. We are going to have to file the E string part to make it a little bit wider to get that string to fit, but otherwise it's just going to be the exact same steps for every single string. So first, you want to grab your U-bass, all right? And if you have one of these models, like the Journeyman or the Wanderer or the Passenger, you're going to have to unscrew these little screws on the back. If you have one of the more expensive models like the Exotic Mahogany, you'll have a magnetic back piece and you won't have to unscrew anything, you'll just take the magnetic piece off. So you'll need a screwdriver, you'll probably need wire cutters, and you'll need your U-bass and everything that came with the strings, including those little washers. So we'll talk about what those are for in a second. Let's use a screwdriver to take these screws off the back. Super exciting. And that should do it. So now that we've got that back plate off, we can look inside. As you can see in mine, I chose not to have the washer on one of them. I thought that there was a rattle that was caused by that. It wasn't caused by that. So if you want to use all of them on all the different strings, you can use the washers, but do you see them around the little heads of the strings down there? Okay, if not, we'll talk about it. So now that we got the back plate off, the first thing we want to do is loosen the strings. And I'm only going to take one of them off just to give you an idea. I'm going to take the E string off so that we can talk about what I had to do there. But you loosen the strings. So you just turn the tuner, make sure it's loosening, right? And what I would do is just do one string at a time. So rather than taking all the strings off, having the bass empty and then replacing them all, to keep the tension on the neck, what I would do is leave the other three strings alone and go one at a time. And once you've replaced that one and you've tightened it a little bit, then go on to the next string. Okay, so we loosen the E string. You could start with the G string, but I'm going to start with the E string. All right, and once we've loosened enough, if you have a string winder, it works a lot quicker than this. But once you have it loose enough, we just go over here and we unwind it the rest of the way. The string's not quite loose enough, so I'm going to keep going. But as soon as it's enough to get over that one time, the rest will just unwind. All right, so that one was wound around several times. I almost feel like it was too long, so I'm actually going to use this as an opportunity to show you what we do if the string's too long. As you can see, this string, brand new, straightened out, stretches past the tuner, past the other tuner, past the entire headstock. It's all the way up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go above the tuner about 2.5 to 3 inches and snip it right there. And that way you guys know about how long to leave each one of these. I want to say it's about 2.5 inches. It might be a little bit more than that. But if you leave it any more than that, it'll wind around like 4 times, as you see there. And we don't really need it to wind around 4 times, just like maybe 2, 3, probably at the most. It's up to you. It's just the more winds, the more pressure it's putting on the bass, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this right now. So we've got that string. We pretend this is the old string. We take it all the way off just by threading it through the hole. Boom, it's off. Okay. So now that we have the string out, this is the end that was inside the U-bass. This is the other end. The end that was inside the U-bass has a head on the end of it, and you notice there's a washer right here. This washer is to prevent that head from pulling through the wood in the U-bass, so you definitely want to make sure that you have the washers on the strings that came with it. Okay, so that's that. You put that on there. We're good to go. Okay, once we do that, we're going to take this end, we're going to thread it through the hole in the bridge that was intended for it by going through the back of the U-bass through that larger hole that we just took off that back plate for. So this part takes a minute sometimes. Thread it through. All right. And once you thread it through, pull it through. Super. Now we got it, okay? So we've got it all the way through to where the washer is up against the base. We go down to the other end. Now with the E-string, this is the reason why I'm using this one in particular, if you notice here how jagged that looks, that's because I actually had to file this down to make it bigger. So basically, with this bridge, it was intended for round wound strings. The round wounds aren't as thick as the flat wound strings. So because of that, I had to widen that groove with a file. And Mike at Uke Republic was kind enough to let me do that. Since I bought the strings from him, he's like, here, I've got a file. You can go ahead and file it down here. And he had a round file. If you can find a round file, that worked great. He had different sized ones because he works on instruments all the time. It was awesome. But if not, you could technically do it with a knife or with something else, or you could do what Kala recommends, and that's replace the nut with the one that's intended for the rubber strings so that the grooves are just already wide enough. Okay, but once you do that, you make that groove right there wide enough. We got our string, we put it back through, and you can just test to make sure it's wide enough by seeing if it fits in that gap. After that, we're gonna cut the string. So this string was too long. It's going all the way past the headstock, a couple of inches. I'm gonna cut it to where it's even with the end of the headstock. So that's about, from this tuner, about 2.5 inches. So always go from the tuner. Do not just go to the end of the headstock, or else this string will end up too short because that's not a lot of room. You probably want to leave about 3 inches above each string so that they have enough to wind around a couple times. You may decide to do less on some of them, but we'll just go with that. They're not easy to cut. So, boom. So got that. Make sure not to leave it on the floor so you don't step on it. Now what we're gonna do is we put the end down in this hole, and then we bend the string in this way just a little bit. We don't crease it, we just bend it over a little bit. And then here we make sure that we're threaded through there. And then what I do is I like to keep my thumb down on this to keep the string down. So that needs to stay in that groove. Make sure that it's over enough to where it'll catch on there. And then that needs to go here, and always go from the inside out to the strings. So when you're on the other strings, just look at the way they're wound, like that. You want to keep the string on the inside of the peg, not the outside, but the inside. Okay. And then we just turn our tuner. If you have a string winder, this would be a great time to use a string winder. Okay, make sure it's going to stay down in the hole. Make sure it's good to go. Okay, so that's another tool that you could get if you were smarter than me. Bring a string winder with you. I actually have one in the other room, but I'm stubborn, so I'm just going to keep winding this way. And my thumb is holding the string down so that it doesn't come up. I'm trying to keep the string in the groove of the nut while I'm doing this as well. It takes a good amount of time. One reason we hold it down low like this is so that the coils don't totally wrap around each other. Okay, so you hear it starting to pull the string through the bridge. If you have a little bit of extra bit coming through there, you can pull that side down there to make sure the washer is flat with the U-base on the inside. And we just keep turning. And once it gets to a certain point, like where the string feels kind of tight, you can let go with your thumb and it's good to go. And then you're just ready to tune it. Like I said, it should fit in that groove just fine. If it doesn't fit in the groove over here, then you need to cut it a little bit more. Sorry, that strap's getting in the way. But that fits pretty well for me. I'm happy with that, and it's not causing extra buzz. Now we're just going to tune the string. I'm using the built-in tuner, but if you have an external one, you could use that as well. Almost at E. And then the strings are going to stretch when they're brand new, so you might as well just go ahead and like tug on them lightly like this. We're just pulling forward, and then see if it stays in tune after you do that. If it doesn't, tighten it back up. And after doing that a couple of times, it should stay. If not, it might take up to a week to set. But it usually takes longer with the rubber strings than it does with the flat wounds or the round wounds. All right, and then we're just going to repeat this process with all the other strings. It's just the exact same thing. Make sure to use those washers so that the strings don't hurt the bass, basically. So a couple of extra things to keep in mind while you're doing all this is once you've got all 4 strings on there, you may have to loosen them all just slightly and move them around a little bit on here to make sure they're all evenly pushing the bridge down, because the way that this bass picks up the vibration of the strings is through this bridge. So in order to get it to pick them up evenly, you may have to mess around with the tension to just make sure that it's pushing down evenly across all 4 spots. What happened for me was when I put these strings on there, I noticed the G string was a lot quieter than the E, A, and the D, and I had to loosen them up and just kind of adjust them and try to tighten them in different orders and stuff, just to make sure that they were evenly pushing down so that you get a balance of the strings. So that's one thing to look out for. Another thing is there might be a little bit of buzz at first with these strings. I never figured out if it was the washer in the bass or if it was something up here rattling a little bit, or if it was that I didn't put the back plate on quite tight enough. So if you have a little bit of rattle, it seems to go away in a couple of days, and it may just be that the strings take a little while to set. But I haven't really experienced that rattle since then. So it really seems to go away. Just in case that's something that you have an issue with, you can mess around with it a little bit. I chose to not put the washer on the G string of the bass in there to try to get rid of that. And honestly, I may want to go in and put it back on, because I really don't think that's what it was, because the rattle was still there when I did that, but it went away over time. I don't think it matters, and please correct me if I'm wrong. If you are going from the bass with the rubber strings, you shouldn't have to file these grooves out because they should already be wide enough. Alright, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. As of right now, I do not know how to change the nut. I've never done that. So if you feel uncomfortable with it, you could get a shop to do it. I know Uke Republic does some custom things on ukuleles and U-basses, so if you wanted to, you could order one with that in mind. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to change strings on your U-bass. If you like this video, you can subscribe to the channel, or you can become a patron. And I will talk to you guys next week, and actually I have a video coming out Tuesday as well. Bye for now, guys.